Hi everyone, my name is Frankie B and you are watching the Fans View podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to a fun, kind of first time interview right here on the Fans View podcast. We're actually live on location from LAX. My guest joins us this week from the land down under, and I know that's so cheesy and just everybody says it, but she is not your average pro wrestler. But I think after you guys hear her talk a little bit, you're going to realize that pretty quickly. I want to welcome on today's guest, Frankie B. What's up, guys? This is usually the part in the beginning of the conversation where my guest introduces themselves and we have, a fun discussion. Unfortunately, Frankie was recording this interview from her phone, sitting in a terminal in LAX, trying to get home to Australia at the end of WrestleMania weekend. So unfortunately, we lost about 8 minutes of the interview. It was really just kind of getting to know her a little bit. Her explaining who Frankie B is, which is somebody that is just immensely talented. And I feel like we're really going to start to know her name over here in the States pretty soon. Unfortunately, that part of the interview is gone. There's nothing I can do about it. I hate that. But that said, we have about 20 minutes of usable footage. So I'm going to throw over to myself and Frankie right about now. I know, and we talked a little bit off camera, we couldn't quite nail down the year. Somewhere in the time of 2016 to 2018, before you actually debuted, you actually had, I saw online it be categorized as catastrophic, but it was a pretty significant injury. Obviously, you tore ligaments in your ankle, broke it in 3 places. Can you talk a little bit about that injury? First off, what happened?
Ankle previously and it had healed normally. And then I started wrestling. So my ankle was good to go. But when I started wrestling, obviously doing different things and sort of jumping and all of that, I just didn't think anything of it. But I was in a training match and it was one of those matches where the coaches at the time were assessing whether or not you were capable of having your debut match. So kind of the worst timing ever. But I was doing my training match and I took a bump really badly. My foot got caught and I bumped on my foot. My foot had inverted in itself and got caught under my ribs. So I pretty much just bumped straight on my ankle. And because I'm like super hypermobile, the injury was much worse than what it should have been for someone else. So it was very fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
How does something like that, obviously you came back. How does something like that affect you physically? How long did it take you, before you were comfortable planting on that ankle? And secondly, and I'd say most importantly, how did that affect you mentally? Because you hear people talk about, when they have a torn ACL or a ruptured Achilles, it's the mental game that gets to them and trusting that body part again more so than the physical.
So I think I was out for close to a year and a half. And that was because I had like a cast and then I was in a boot and then I was still on crutches for a long time. But then just becoming comfortable with running and jumping, that took a little bit extra. So the actual physical time that I was out didn't bother me. I was very much ready to quit when I did get injured. And because it's almost like dangling a carrot, it was like, oh, I'm so close and I don't want to give up, but also I know how hard the road is going forward because I now have to work 10 times harder. So the mental game was a massive thing for me. I was just very lucky with the people that I had surrounded myself with, being Kingsley and Madison Eagles. So obviously I know that a lot of people are familiar with Madison, and we all know that she's had a few injuries herself. So it was very comforting knowing that someone was in the same position as me or had gone through something very similar, but then also has gone back to being at the top of her game, which she had. So I relied on her a lot to kind of help me out mentally, to just pursue and just to keep training and keep sort of going through the motion, which I was very lucky and I'm very grateful for, because without, I guess, her that time in my life, I probably would have stopped wrestling.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm sure I speak for most people when we say, like, we're so glad that you were able to
Mhm.
overcome that and, get back in the ring. That's no small feat for sure.
Yeah.
I want to move on to something I saw recently, actually today. And it's funny that we had scheduled this today and I saw this today, so I had to bring it up. Indy Hartwell, for fellow Aussie,
Yeah.
recently said in an interview that Australia is it's brimming with talent. But you kind
hmm
of alluded to it earlier, where it's like there's not a lot of opportunity, and that's kind of what she said. She said because of Australia's geography, being on the other side of the world from the United States, there's so much talent that just doesn't get any attention or any shine. Is that kind of something that you'd agree with?
I probably couldn't agree with anything more than what she said in that statement. Australia is just an untapped market for wrestling, and it's incredible to see the reach that the US has. Like, obviously, per quota, like, there's 10 times more the amount of people that are wrestling, but the quality back home is ridiculously insane. And we are almost like sheltered a little bit because we don't have the same amount of eyes on us. But I can probably, off the top of my head, name like 10 to 15 people that either should have a contract, should be signed to New Japan, or should be doing things way out of Australia, but just aren't, because the opportunities just aren't there.
Absolutely. I mean, we've gotten such gems like Tennille and Harley, the Iconics. I mean, I would love to see what you guys got down there cooking. I really want to see some more talents head stateside. Um, this is something I'd love to talk about because obviously this is the Fans View podcast, so I love to look at it from a fan perspective. Pro wrestling can't be done without the fans. Can you think of maybe the first time? Tell me how it felt the first time you were at a show and maybe you saw somebody with a Frankie B sign on, or with a sign, or maybe a T-shirt on, or a piece of merch. What that felt like?
I remember my first match. So I was wrestling. It was just out of COVID, so obviously a little bit of a different dynamic. And back home, PWA were running almost like shed shows, and I had
Mm-hmm.
actually made my debut in a little shed, but it had maybe like 50 people there. So I am very grateful, because I couldn't imagine debuting in front of more than that amount of people, because it's obviously quite scary.
Yeah.
So when like my family and stuff were there, it was exhilarating, and it's a different kind of high that you just never get used to. But I remember that I actually had sold a shirt, my first ever shirt, and they were wearing, like, this particular fan was actually wearing it on a show that I wasn't booked at, but I was around, and it completely took me by surprise, and I was like, oh, okay, like, you do realize there's like a gazillion other people on this show, and you're like wearing my shirt. And she was like, I just love you so much. And, you know, like, she's like, you're the best, and I wish you were on this show, and all these sort of things. And I was just like, I was like almost like in a bit of a daze. I was like, someone's wearing my shirt. Like, I wasn't completely comprehending what she was saying. I was just stuck on the fact that someone was wearing my shirt. So that was a surreal moment, and it's happened a few times, but now I'm just like, oh, this is cool. Like, this is very
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
That's awesome. And that kind of leads me to my next question, was going to be, is there one fan interaction over the years that kind of sticks out to you? But that kind of sounds like it might be the one.
There's that one, and then we have a very beautiful lady back home. Her name's Beck. Beck within the Australian wrestling scene is she is just a gem of a human. Everyone loves her. She is that person that is rooting for everyone. Like, she is your biggest supporter, but she's also your biggest hater at the same time. And you give her everything. So every time that she's at a show, you're just so thankful that she's there. And she's like your number one supporter, no matter if you're a heel or if you're a face, whatever you are. She is just so for Australian wrestling. It's actually incredible. And she's definitely someone that sticks out for me.
That. You bring such a confidence and like just a flair like to the ring. Just you're such a vibe. How much of Frankie B is you turned up to 10?
100%.
That's what I was hoping you'd say.
Yeah, so Frankie B is very much a sub-version of... Actually, no, I should say it the other way around. My normal persona is like a very sub-version of Frankie B. And I learned that very quickly when I first started wrestling, as in I was taught that the character that you have needs to be relatable, so it needs to be a version of yourself that you don't show everyone all the time. So that's where Frankie B's come from. She's just like, I am confident, I am very out there, I am a big extrovert, but then Frankie B just takes it,
off the rails.
Yeah, off the rails.
Are there any pre-match? This is a fun question. Are there any pre-match rituals that you might have, or something like a little hype up routine that you do right before you go through the curtain?
I've realized that I wear the same socks. That is something that I cannot change. I wear 2 pairs of wrestling socks and that's it. And then I tie my shoelaces in a particular way. But I also, right before my match, I kind of like slap myself, which I don't know where I got from. Like, it's actually quite annoying because like people are sitting there trying to, hype themselves up, and then you've just got me like banging on my chest and like banging around, and I'm like, all right, cool, done that, I'm ready to go. Yeah,
Female Bill Goldberg over here.
Yeah, just without the sparklers and the big 5-minute entrance.
Yeah, we're not slamming our heads in any lockers either, hopefully.
Not yet.
I love that. Do you have any dream match? And I know you do, but do you have any dream match scenarios that you'd love the fans to see one day, whether it be an opponent, location, everything?
So for the moment, my goal is to break into Japan, which I've like trained in Japan, but I think wrestling in Japan is just completely different. So that's going to be a little goal of mine. In terms of dream matches, I would definitely say like Io Sky. So it's very much on the Japanese sort of way of thinking. I would actually love to wrestle Rhea, obviously. And then there's a few people like back home that I'd love to wrestle. So like Charlie Evans is definitely on the top of that list. And obviously we do like a lot of intergender back home. So like Sam Osborne, this is all singles as well. So I feel like myself and Nikki, my tag partner, have done quite a bit as a tag. But yeah, as a singles wrestler, I think those would be my top people.
Okay. Here's a deep one for you. How do you want the fans to remember Frankie B 10, 15 years from now when you've possibly hung up the boots? Obviously, it's early in your career, so I know that's a hard question to ask, but...
I would love people... Well, this is actually quite a hard question. You stumped me a little bit. No.
Gotcha.
I think what I would want people to remember about Frankie B the most is that looks can be deceiving. So you can have a certain aesthetic and you can have a certain aura in wrestling, but their wrestling speaks for their ability, if that makes sense. So I would love people to be like, oh yeah, she's really hot. Great, love that. Heard it a million times. But I would love people to be like, she was a fantastic wrestler. So mixing those two together would be my ultimate goal. And just knowing people, like knowing that people know not to mess with me. I'd be happy with that.
I like that. I like that. It's a very interesting answer. I don't think I've gotten that one yet. I really like that.
Hey you, yeah, watching this right now. I see you. If you're enjoying what you're watching, I've got one quick favor to ask, and it only takes a second, costs you nothing, and makes a huge difference. If you could go ahead and hit that like button, maybe drop a comment. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed. Doesn't seem like much, but for small creators, it's everything. So let's help more people find this channel and keep the content coming. And honestly, I'm pretty sure the podcast will be really grateful. So if you're having fun, you like what you see, make it official, click those buttons, and the Fans View podcast, we'll see you next time.
To kind of dig into the Fans View perspective again, this is like one of my favorite questions to ask all my guests, and that is, what are you a fan of? Obviously, when you're not in the wrestling ring.
What am I a fan of? As in,
besides peanut butter M&Ms. No, not specifically not wrestling related. Like, what are you just a fan of?
So at the moment, I'm a big fan of the F1, and I know what people are going to say. And that's just purely because of the Netflix series, and some of the drivers are like ridiculously good looking. So that is why, and I will happily admit that there are some sexy F1 drivers. So that's why I'm like watching F1.
Shoot your shot, Frankie. Shoot your shot.
So, Charles Leclerc, if you're hearing this, hit me up, please. Yeah, very much into sport. I do love watching and playing sport aside from wrestling. So like football or soccer, which some people want to call it. And then I've always been into like just really adventurous things, but I've just gotten into sewing, so I now make gear, which is a new venture in life. So that's where a lot of my time goes. But that is definitely a new thing that I'm very much interested about, or in, I should say.
Very cool. Very cool. Finally, and we're going to bring this thing home, what does the word success mean to you? And let that be in wrestling or just in life in general. What do you consider success?
My definition of success would definitely, first of all, being a millionaire. That would be my first and foremost definition of being successful.
Love that.
But then it would also entail being like happy with what I'm doing, being happy with what, I've brought and done with my life, and making sure like my family is very much healthy and happy themselves, and just I know that I can be very successful. People would think I'm successful now because of what I've done. Being 28, some of my compliment in terms of like traveling and the work that I do outside of wrestling and how I sort of live my life, but I'm always reaching for bigger and better things. So my success would be when I know that I can go home and I have no worries. I know that sounds very cliche, and a lot of people are like, oh, you'll always be worried about something, but I know that for me to be successful, I need to have all my eggs in, all my ducks in a line.
Yeah.
But also just content with what I've done. Like I've always said that I've never wanted a boring life. It's weird to think about because when I was younger, I was like, I've never wanted a 9-to-5 job, and I've never wanted to work in an office. I just never knew how I was going to do something apart from that. And then my life has led me to where I am now. And it's a very full circle moment. Cause I'm like, I've obviously always said it. I've never thought about actively doing it, but at the same time, me not actively doing it has also brought me to the situation and to the circumstance that I'm in at the moment. So I'd say that I'm actually quite successful now, but I would love to see how what I'm doing at the moment brings me success later.
Yeah, for sure. You can be successful now and still try to add a couple zeros to that bank account.
100%.
I'm sure your F1, your future F1 driver husband is gonna really appreciate that.
I'm gonna have to put in the prenup that I need peanut butter M&Ms, otherwise I'm gonna go broke trying to buy them.
Atta girl, you got to get it in. Get your shit in, as they say. Get your shit in. Last but not least, Frankie, this has been so much fun. I wish all interviews were as fun as you are sitting in LAX. What's next for you now that WrestleMania week's over and you're headed home? Any appearances, merch drops, projects that you want fans to know about?
So I probably will have a new shirt coming. That is currently in the works. I did intend to have it for Vegas, but it just didn't work out, which in theory was probably better. But I've got some limited edition trading cards that are coming through. I've got some new t-shirts coming through. I've got new 8x10s coming through. I am trying to get back into Japan. I have actually decided today that I am going to try and come back to the States for SummerSlam around that August period. I also have a few shows back home that are quite big that I am probably not allowed to speak about just yet, but I probably will be on a few of those. I'll probably go also back down to Melbourne to defend my BCW championship. There's also WWE going to Perth, so I'll be around there. And yeah, there's some other things that I'm in the works. Yeah.
You mentioned your t-shirts and your 8x10s and your cards. Do you ship internationally? Do you ship to the States?
Of course I do. Yes, I definitely definitely do.
Where can people order those?
So through my Instagram, I have a big cartel store. That everything is there.
Okay, and I'll make sure to link that in the description.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this has been so much fun. Where can people, I don't want to forget this, where can people get a hold of you on social media, on your Instagram, X, stuff like that?
It's Instagram, X, and Twitter. And again, don't quote me, I'm going to say they're all the same handle. I think Twitter's the only one that isn't, so it's usually just Frankie B Pro. And you can find me.
You just Google her, folks. You're going to find her, trust me.
I have a little link thing in my bio. I don't know. I'm not that tech savvy.
There you go. Well, guys, make sure you check her out. We're going to link the Big Cartel website in the description of the podcast and the YouTube video. We're going to plug her socials. Go show her some love. Let's get her back to the States in August and maybe get her on WrestleCon or something. Let's fill those pockets. The girl has M&Ms that she has to buy, people. They are not cheap. If you see her at a signing, bring her some M&Ms, sealed, of course, maybe. Don't be weirdos.
Yes, please. No.
But Frankie, thank you so much for coming on. Like I said, this has been so much fun. We'll have to do it again. We'll have to figure out the time difference and do it again.
Yeah, you're just lucky you've caught me on a good day. Do you know how much?
I can only imagine.
Well,
definitely like I said, again. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on. Travel days are never fun, and your travel day is absolutely bananas. So we really appreciate you stopping by to talk with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'll see you guys in 15 hours when I land.
There you go. And make sure you follow her on Instagram so you can see all the shenanigans that ensue on the way, because I'm sure it's not going to be smooth sailing.
Don't say that.
Until next time, guys, I want to thank you guys so much for joining. Don't forget, like, subscribe, all the things. Drop a comment. Tell Frankie how great she is. I mean, it never hurts. But most importantly, guys, don't forget, call your mom.
If you haven't liked or subscribed, you're going to be joking me.